Welcome back, everyone. Took a little bit of a break. We are back. We're excited. It's Simply Bitcoin. We break down the news from Twitter, the daily fail, meme review, software releases, hardware releases, and today a website by Plebs. That's right, we brought that back. And also joining us today, very special guest, fellow Bitcoiner, Fumble McBumble Esquire. Anyways, we are going into the numbers. Let's do it.
Number time. Number Time is brought to you by Bitcoin 2022. It's going to be the largest Bitcoin conference ever hosted in sunny Miami Beach, Florida. Get your tickets now before the price goes up. But you can take advantage of the link down below in the link description for 10% off your tickets to Bitcoin 2022.
At the time of this recording, the block height is 716,000. The Bitcoin price, 51,490. Chain rewrite day, 759. Total public lightning capacity, 3,298. Moscow time, 1942. That was a cool arcade game. Anyways, blocks to the halvening, 124,000. The numbers.
That is so weird. The block height is just so beautiful because it's 716,000. There's no numbers. Like, what is the probability of that? Very freaking low. Just say.
It's true.
Just say.
And not only that, right? But the blocks to the halvening is 124,000 as well, right?
Phil, is this a special episode? This is a special episode.
Is it a special episode?
Yeah, dude. When you have numbers like that, it's a sign.
Is it? Mm-hmm. I mean, don't get me wrong. We also had 1942 for the Moscow time,
I'm
which
telling you. Mm-hmm.
And not only that,
it's all interconnected.
It is, and you know what? Over the weekend, we had what is it? Sats per dollar at 1984, right?
Yeah, so
I had no choice. I mean, like, it's just like I see numbers like that. I'm like, oh, look at that, you know. And then of course I call it Moscow time on my widget, so all the tinfoil hat type of numbers.
How do you what widget do you use? You have an iPhone widget? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the iPhone widget. It's the
What
widget
app?
for the Moscow time. The app is the Moscow time app.
Oh, dude, that's crazy. I have to check that one. I use the really boring one, the Apple stock. No, the Strike. I use the Strike widget. That's the one that I use because it has the little graph that doesn't do it, but it looks cool. That's why I use it. Anyways, back to Signal. Okay, so
Enough noise.
We're getting sidetracked. Okay. So
sidetracked at the garbage.
Look, we're at the end of the year, and I'm going to keep reiterating this. I've been reiterating it the last couple episodes, and of course, we're going to get our guests to chime in. But, man, everyone was wrong, including myself. And I know, Phil, we had the same prediction. We were all expecting 100K by the end of the year. If you've been listening to this channel, though, we never said that, right? We kept it to ourselves, and there's a reason for that, is we don't like to speculate. The reason we don't like to speculate is because people get it wrong. Right, we're all human, right? We're all super biased, and you know, most TA guys, and they're all good friends of mine. They're good dudes. I'm not trying to bash on them. I'm not trying to criticize what they do, but what I'm trying to say is that everyone, huge names, small names, everyone is expecting at least 100K Bitcoin by December. We are now in December, a couple days until the new year, and we are not at 100K Bitcoin. I would like to say that is because of the China ban and the massive hash rate drop. It took a long time to recover. It makes sense because you have to move those physical machines to new locations, plug them in. I think it's absolutely crazy that the hash rate recovered within the year. Phil had to drink maple syrup because of it. Absolutely insane. But I think that a lot of people didn't really fully take that into account. Of course, I'm a miner, so I'm seeing it from the lens of a miner, the perspective of a miner. But at the end of the day, I think that played a major role. I really think so. I think that really took the momentum out of Bitcoin. I think that Bitcoin was like primed, bro. Like it was like either the beginning of this year or middle of this year that it was like the thing was on fire. And then the China ban happened, hit everyone out of left field. No one was expecting it, and it just took the momentum out. And maybe it delayed it. Maybe it just took it out completely. I don't know. Phil, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's delayed? Do you think it's... What's going on?
Okay, so, you know, we were talking about this morning, right? I kind of feel like we're in an echo chamber because now we all sound the same, right? Or we all sound like variations of the same idea. Oh, well, the bull run just got extended. You know, like that's what. Oh yeah, you know, because we didn't start to, we didn't start to make the lower lows, and we're not showing that the bull run has run out of steam. We're kind of sitting up at this plateau, and we're doing a lot of sideways action. So people are like, oh yeah, it's the bull run just got extended. I think that one of the major issues that we have is that if you pay too much attention to the TNA, and you don't build enough conviction, meaning you don't do enough research about the space, specifically about Bitcoin, specifically about the infrastructure, specifically about the development that is happening on Lightning and around Bitcoin, okay? Yeah, that the TNA stuff is gonna get you every time. Like it's going to get you every single time because you're going to base all of your hopes and your dreams on this technical analysis, which really is extrapolation. This is what we were saying before. It's extrapolation from previous data points, okay? And then an assumption, a quote unquote educated assumption, nonetheless, right, is made about the future. And let's face it, the future is completely uncertain, right? It's not just a philosophical point. All we have is now. All we have is this moment. So it's nice to have hopium. It feels great. But at the same time, this goes back to Matt Odell's point, the stay humble, stack sats, and just kind of take that long view.
Absolutely, man. I think you said it perfectly. You got a little philosophical there. I love it. Love it. Phil being philosophical. I completely agree. I think it's important to stay on top of the signal because that's really stuff. That's really what's important. And that's what we really try to stick to on this channel. Why we don't do TA, because TA is a frick ton of noise. That's really what it is. Yes, it feels good to get a lot wealthier. Yes, it feels good, to see your portfolio value. Even though you should really be paying attention to how much sats you have, not what your Kaka fiat price is, but everyone does that out of habit, and it's exactly what you said, Phil. This is why TA is so dangerous. This is literally why, because of these situations. And at the same time, these guys could have been 100% right too, right? So it's moments like these that it's like this is what humbles you. These types of situations. But anyways. Fumble, are you on the same boat as us? Did you also have expectations for the end of the year?
I thought that 100K would be like a safe bet, because remember we had some predictions that were upwards to I heard 600K from, I don't know if it was the JP Morgan or something similar, one of those kind of entities. And so there was a lot of hopium. I thought 100K is safe. So I thought I'd stick with that as my mental model. But as we were touching upon before this, I think the longer you're in this space, the more you kind of decondition yourself, and you kind of invert your emotions to the price. So when the price goes down, you're happy, and when the price goes up, you're maybe not necessarily unhappy, but you're looking for more opportunity to get more. And the price is a distraction, and the longer that you actually pay attention to the fundamentals, that's the thing that makes me most bullish. And you actually covered it on one of your previous episodes, mentioning about how people are still mining in China, the behavior of miners when you're actually not looking at the price, but you're looking at what people are doing. The fact that more and more miners, I remember a few years ago, the model was you sell the Bitcoin to run your costs, to keep afloat. Whereas now miners are not wanting to sell, and even in the most controlling countries, people are still doing it anyway. So that to me is pure signal. That is what's bullish, and price means very little.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to stay on the signal. And I think that speaks loads of Bitcoin, right? In one of the most totalitarian countries, that if you get caught, you could be locked in jail for a long time without any particular reason. But the incentives of Bitcoin are so irresistible that people can't help themselves but to mine Bitcoin, even though it's illegal. And I wanted to also pull up a little bit of data, because I know that you guys also appreciate this, right? Here is some Glassnode signal. I'm going to connect this with what Mark Moss said when he came on the show. Essentially, he's talking about that you should really, and I'm going to connect this with what Fumble was saying, that you should be really looking at the growth of the Bitcoin network. And this is number of active addresses, so addresses on the Bitcoin network that are active, right? And if you look at the peaks, right, here is 2017, the number of active addresses really hit essentially an all-time high. Then here is the all-time high back in May of this year, or late April, May, right? Hits another all-time high. Now, we hit an all-time high not too long ago, but as you can see, it's like the activity of the network kind of died down, and you kind of connect that with the fees that you're able to pay. And I know, Phil, you've noticed that, right? Everyone is expecting higher fees, but the fees are just like, they're minimal. You could send a transaction. I checked the other day, it was like 7 Satoshi, and that's because I just wanted to send it quickly. You could have sent it with 2 Satoshis. I'm sure that it would have gone through, gone through. So everyone was so wrong on so many different levels. And it's like, what about the block height? You need bigger blocks. And it's like, man, it's you can't understand. You don't know what the honey badger is going to do in the future. That's all I got to say.
Every day that Bitcoin lives on is another day where a shitcoin narrative dies. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because really, all it keeps doing is it keeps growing, and like you said, it keeps doing things that we didn't expect. I expected higher fees. I keep looking at the fees saying, that's pretty cheap. And when I go to do transactions or something like that, I don't need Lightning. I just do it on the base layer still. So if you ask me, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And we just need to, we just kind of need to not be so overconfident and so foolish.
Yep.
Right? Because I think that's also part of it, right? Like, we think we understand this so well, but how? How do we understand this so well? Do we really have any precedent for this? No. It's just hubris. Just stupid monkeys. Anyways.
We're all just stupid monkeys. That's the signal. That's the signal. If you learned something today, Phil just called you a stupid monkey. But anyways, Phil, it's time for the Daily Fail.
The Daily Fail is brought to you by Amber app. Check them out. It's the easiest way to buy Bitcoin. Amber.app. The link is down below. You know what? During the holidays, I looked outside, and right out my window, I saw a yellow Muppet. And the yellow Muppet told me to do one thing.
Amber, the smart way to stack sats.
All right, so that's right. We said it's the Daily Fail, okay? It's not a meme review, but this is indeed a fail, okay? So, Publord put out this meme, which was hilarious. Just a reminder that inferior technologies always lose. I still have a Blockbuster card, okay? I keep it as a memory. I don't know why, to be honest, but it's just fun to see. But then something happened, right? Usually when you get a nice tweet like this that's entertaining and funny, what you do is you retweet it, because it gives the original poster credit, and at the same time you get to share it, with all the people that follow you. But you see, the Bitcoin account, I don't know who runs that, but the Bitcoin account had a different idea. The Bitcoin account figured, I'm just going to take this picture, I'm going to take what they wrote, and I'm just going to repost it as me. So yeah, that is a fail. The Bitcoin account, you could do better.
They just ripped it?
Yep, totally ripped it. Completely ripped it.
How much engagement did...
So, take a look, right? So Pubby's got 2,000. Bitcoin's got 3,352.
But Pubby got a crap ton of engagement.
Yeah, he did. And Dylan, right? Yo, Bitcoin, how much BTC would it take to buy this handle? Because let's face it, it's kind of an embarrassment. Okay, anyways, that was a light fail. We're going to move on from that.
It would just be better if they just banned that account. All right.
Yeah. I mean,
it'd be better for everybody.
Yeah. I can't stand that account. It's just awful. All right, here we go. Let's dive into the real part of this fail, okay? And actually, before we dive into it, I just want to give a little preface, right? So look, everybody's heard that El Salvador is using Bitcoin as legal tender. Okay, and there are some YouTubers out there that are, for whatever reason, pretending to be Bitcoiners or trying to create some narrative to give themselves attention, to make it seem like they're offering objective, unbiased information. But unfortunately, what they're really doing is being disingenuous about how the technology is being used. Okay, now, all of this is going to make sense in a second. Okay, so we are going to dive into this, right? Because there have been rumors going around, right, that El Salvador is actually using a shitcoin. Okay, they're actually using Algorand. So, had to go do some digging, right? Because, hey, we also want to figure out what's what, and we want to understand. It's not about being right. It's not about what's wrong. It's about understanding what is real and what is happening. Okay, that's all it is. So, let's dive into it. Nico's going to actually... Oh, sorry.
Excellent preface.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's not preface, it's preface.
Preface.
It
doesn't matter. Tomato makes no difference.
Preface sounds better, okay? I
Does
know
it?
there's going to be someone in the comments that, no, it doesn't. It's preface.
Preface. I'm prefacing this. Okay, so here we go. We said that word too much now. That word is dead. Can't say it again. Okay, so here we go. El Salvador to launch government blockchain infrastructure on Algorand this year. Okay? Nico's going to post, I just want to explain, Nico's going to show a comment in our, from one of our YouTube, from one of our viewers, for one of our previous episodes, okay, about El Salvador. So here we go. Listen closely, though. The country has signed an agreement with the Latin American asset tokenization company Coinbanks to allow official records to be hosted on the blockchain. Not money. They're not using this for money. They're not using this for Bitcoin. It's for official government records, which means a slow database. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I troubleshot SQL in my previous life. I installed it and configured it and used to do all that fun stuff. Anyways, here we go. El Salvador's government has signed an agreement with Coinbanks, a Latin American asset tokenization and blockchain financial infrastructure company, to develop the country's blockchain infrastructure on top of Algorand blockchain. And this is where people need to understand the signal. The ability to store official documents, not money, not currency, documents, on top of the Algorand blockchain will come before the end of the year. Coinbank's CEO and co-founder Leo Elduyan told CoinDesk. Let's keep going. We assumed that a government that is willing to take this type of measure might also be open to use or leverage blockchain technology for other aspects, not only for what the law defines itself, but for other government areas, he noted. Here we go. According to Elduyan, each person or legal entity will have its own address containing tokens or hashes with documentation. Not money. Slow database. Documentation. Not money. In addition, all transactions between private companies or individuals with different government entities will be recorded on the Algorand protocol. Not money. Elduyan clarified that money won't be exchanged on the platform, but securities or rights such as property titles or bank guarantees will be. Not money. Okay? So these disingenuous shitcoiners that can't read for more than 5 minutes, do yourself a favor. Stop sounding like a fool. Read for more than 5 minutes, okay? Now, let's talk about the shitcoin narrative a little bit. We never say that the technology is bad, okay? See, this is one of the things that the shitcoining philosophy or the shitcoin philosophers want to make you believe. They want to make you believe that Bitcoiners, Bitcoin maximalists are anti-technology, even though we're using the first digital asset, the first scarce digital asset in human history. It doesn't matter, okay? We are anti-technology, apparently, okay? So let's understand this idea for a second. We understand that technology is great. We understand that technology can make all of our lives better. What we also understand is that technology doesn't need to be money all the time. Okay, and if you want to invest in technology, you can invest in the company. And of course, you're going to have some shitcoiner come back to you and say, well, that's what I'm doing when I'm buying tokens. No, you're not. You are literally buying absolutely nothing. If you want to own a proper piece of a company, okay, then you go and become an investor. Okay, not a bag holder of shitcoins that have no voting rights and give you absolutely no legal recourse. Okay? This is the whole problem with shitcoins. This is what people don't understand. It doesn't need to be money. So as we just read, okay, Algorand is a shitcoin. The shitcoin is going to pump because people are going to pretend that it's being used for something that it's not. Okay? It's a slow database that the government is going to attempt to leverage between different departments to store official government data, not money. So these, I don't know, like these these pretended Bitcoiners on YouTube, some of them, I don't know where the hell they're getting this from. And it's funny, right? Because one of them in the Virtue Signal, right, was like, oh, I went to El Salvador. So because you went there, that means you understand what they're doing with Algorand? Is that what we're supposed to believe? So that somehow negates the fact that you didn't read about any of this and dive into any of this. Just because you visited the country, you may know all. Anyways, I'm glad that we were able to put this to rest. I'm glad that it was said clearly multiple times, okay, that it is used for government documents. I'm done.
Phil, the shitcoin slayer. Look, there's so many components here. First of all, why are you using a blockchain or a database? That's number one. So like, I'm kind of disappointed in El Salvador. Number two, again, you know, this goes into essentially why a lot of these shitcoin channels, they don't really have your best interests at heart, right? And we've talked about this many times on the show. They're selling hopium in hopes to get more engagement, right? We've talked about this a lot also on the show, where if we started selling hopium instead of focusing on the signal could be boring sometimes, we'd be growing a lot faster, right? So it's just a matter of, you know, when you see these channels and they have the very clickbaity thumbnails and all that stuff, you have to ask yourself, what are they trying to sell me? You know, what are they trying to convince me? Every other title is like, this is the next coin that can make you a millionaire and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, no, like, you know, and it goes to show, like, once you actually start doing digging, right, the article specifically says that they're not going to use this for money. But of course, that doesn't fit the narrative, right? It's a lot easier to say El Salvador is using this and not Bitcoin, and then all the shitcoiners flock. It's like, yeah, because Bitcoin is old and slow and all these things, and then they start buying into the narrative. But if you do a little bit of digging, which just requires a 5-second Google search, you know, it debunks it completely. But you know, I think it was necessary, Phil, because those comments were intense. I didn't even know what they were talking about. I was like, what is Algorand? Like, what is going on here? I don't even know. Right. Yeah.
I just want to point out, hold on. I just want to point out, right? Because I did do a little bit more digging into Algorand, right? I went to the app deal site, right? We can't help it. We got to go take a look. And we can see here multi-coin cap. So we can see here all the VCs. Okay. We've talked about Cosmos Capital in the past for funding other shitcoin projects. We've got multi-coin capital here, okay? That was part of the Algorand funding. So here, look, we could see, okay, who multi-coin capital, right, has poured their money into, okay? And let's take a look at some of these, right? We're all familiar with Bakkt, right? We remember that. WorldCoin, you remember that, right? WorldCoin, Definity, Solana, Algorand, and this mobile coin. Okay, let's go take a look just quickly, right, at mobile coin for a second. This is a tweet from Dergigi, right, at Moxie, who essentially is the head of Signal. Okay, guess what Signal is doing? Signal is going to essentially fund their app with a shitcoin. Okay, a privacy-centric shitcoin. And of course, 85% of it is pre-mined. And we've got some, unfortunately, the screenshots are a little too small, but we can see here the TLDR. Mobile coin is pre-mined. 85% of it is owned by a single corporate entity. Okay? So you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, so what does that have to do with Algorand? It's the same shitcoin VCs that are pumping money into all of this crap, okay? It's just a whole bunch of noise. That's all it is, just to make you think that there's community, there's development, there's this, there's that. There isn't.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It's a circle jerk.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's a circle jerk, and you're not in it. I wouldn't be surprised if this whole Salvador narrative was purposely created just to make people think that, which is freaking evil, to be honest, which just to make people think that, you know, Salvador is using Solana or is using whatever Algorand or whatever and not Bitcoin. Now, why? Now let's kind of double back and talk about why a country wouldn't use something like Ethereum and they would use something like Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't owned by anybody. Bitcoin isn't controlled by anybody. Bitcoin's monetary policy is set in stone. You can't change it. Ethereum, XRP, Solana, Algorand, it's malleable, right? VCs control the monetary policy. So I don't know what's worse, bureaucratic central bankers or VCs. Like, who do you want controlling your monetary policy? Now, with Bitcoin, it's rules without rulers. That's why El Salvador chose Bitcoin. That's why, right? And if you're holding a shitcoin bag, you have to understand. And look, Phil and I are crazy libertarians, so we're never going to criticize you for any, you know, decision or anything that you'd like to do. If you want to gamble, that's up to you. But understand that you are gambling and you are buying something that someone else literally created to dump on somebody else. Because that is literally the reason these shitcoins exist. And especially the newer ones, right? Why would you want to store your value, store your wealth in something that someone else could debase, right? Something that's highly centralized. We've gone over the receipts when it comes to Ethereum. We've gone over the receipts when it comes to XRP. Why would you want to store your wealth in that? It doesn't make sense. And again, the reason that most people want to store their wealth in that is because they think they're going to get really rich overnight, right? But the people that are really getting rich are the people that created the token in the first place. So again, how much of this Algorand narrative came from them, from the VCs themselves, right? That's a really good question.
You saw who they funded. I mean, like, you saw multi-coin cap. Like, they funded all of the garbage. Like, WorldCoin. Isn't WorldCoin that weird one?
It's the one with the orb, the iris, bro.
Orb? So they funded the orb. They funded Definity. Okay, they funded Solana. Okay, which is a major, which is also a major attack vector, right? Which is essentially like Solana's trying to eat Ethereum, right? And then on top of that, They also funded MobileCoin, which is the shitcoin that was created, which is the shitcoin that is somehow going to fund Signal app. So Signal just lost all of its credibility.
Yeah, dude.
Okay, like by shitcoining.
They could have used Bitcoin, bro.
They of course could have used Bitcoin, but then they would have had to create value, more value, or charge.
Anyway, I'm just glad that you could opt out of it on Signal. But yeah, you're right. I think this is a whole mess. But anyways, Fumble. Are you seeing what we're seeing? Are we being too mean? What are your thoughts?
I don't think you're being too mean. I think I see a lot of people behind the scenes with money. They must be very bitter about like how El Salvador alone has been great PR, great marketing for Bitcoin, and there's no marketing team kind of pushing that. That's on its own merits. So, you know, for these entrenched elites who just want to like pump their own bags. They're not seeing these things adopted by countries, so they kind of have to plant the thought in your head. You have to put it out there, so at least people go, "Oh, what is this? I should look into it." and then they brought your attention to their shitcoin. So you just see the incentives. You see the drive towards they're pumping their own bags. They're enriching themselves, but Bitcoin doesn't need that. So yeah,
absolutely, man. Hit the nail on the head, spot on. Just look at the incentives. And Phil, you've uncovered the rot behind all of this. Is all these companies are just interconnected, and it's like, who is the casualty out of this? You are the user, the person that's not in the circle jerk, which is 99.9% of us, right? Now, Bitcoin levels the playing field. You're just like Michael Saylor. If you're buying Bitcoin and you're taking self-custody, you're doing exactly what Michael Saylor is doing. Let me add to this. You're actually doing more than Michael Saylor, because I don't think Michael Saylor holds his own keys, right? So he's relying on the system, right? But if you're taking self-custody of your Bitcoin, you're doing one step more than what Michael Saylor's doing. Phil, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I saw a tweet, which I cannot find for you. Okay, I'll do my best to. But somebody put out something pretty funny, which was Bitcoiners. You have to be private. Nobody can know how much you have, this and that. And then it also says, also Bitcoiners, Saylor, we don't know how much Bitcoin you hold. Tell us how much Bitcoin you have. Don't get me wrong, right? Like, of course. And that's the beauty about human hypocrisy. All right? That's what it is. And it's true. It's like, I read that tweet and I was like, it's true. It's like, why do I give a shit? Like, I don't care how much he has.
He came onto the scene like a rock star, bro. That guy wants to be center stage. He's the Moses of Bitcoin, bro. He's trying to, sell this ever. He has to do that. He needs to put his name behind it, or else it's not going to have the same oomph, right? So I think there's a reason for it, but again, anyways, who knows? Phil, awesome fail, dude. They just keep getting better. Full-time Phil. Full-time Phil. Anyways, Phil, it's time for the Daily Meme Review. The Daily Meme Review is brought to you by Citadel 21. They are the best Bitcoin cultural zine, pure pleb signal, stories, comics, artwork by plebs, for plebs. Anyways, check it out. Look at that cute kitty. Don't you want to shop Vines? This is volume 14. It just dropped. Anyways, get your physical copy of Citadel 21 today. It's different artwork every volume. Badass AF. All right, everybody, check this out. The memes for today. First one is brought to us by Wrecked. Hodlosaurus Wrecked. Anyways, Bitcoiners, NFTs. It's a flying piece of shit. Highly accurate. I agree. Anyway, I had to think about it. I was like, wait a second. Yeah.
Right? Like, is he looking at it wanting the new steamy turd? Right? The new shiny turd? That's why I was like, wait a second. I'm like, I'm not sure. Anyways.
Next one's brought to us by the legendary RD underscore BTC RD. Anyways, truth hurts. Wow, no coiners. The VR is so realistic. 22% inflation. Poor guy.
You have to scroll down into the comments for this one, because there is a shitcoiner that, yeah, right there. Not an inflation hedge. Okay, check this out. Go look at his profile. This is hilarious. It's so worth it.
Early
BitConnect investor. Hold on. OneCoin blockchain developer.
He might be a troll, Phil.
I think he is a troll. No, I think that is a troll, because he also has this tether shield. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Might be a troll. But I agree. I don't understand those types of trolls, because it's like, what are you doing? Do you just log into Twitter all day and just bash Bitcoin while it goes up? Anyways, hey, to each their own, I guess. Okay, one more node brought us, girlfriend, no talking about the Lightning Network at dinner with my parents, okay? Me, three drinks in, the world is... I did this last night. I was having dinner with my girlfriend's parents, and they brought up Bitcoin, and wow, it started events that you couldn't stop. Anyways, altcoins are shitcoins. I have to hold myself back. I feel bad. Anyways, altcoins are shitcoins. Shitcoins are scams. They told everyone to stop being toxic so that shitcoiners could continue to push their scams unabated. It's Oprah saying no. Listen, I haven't laughed this hard at a meme until this one. This one
Yeah.
was phenomenal. Okay, so shout out to you, bro. Anyways, for those memes, I'm going to give it a very special score, Phil, because I'm traveling. I'm going to give it those conference room chairs that everyone has seen before, that no one really likes, but no one really hates. They're just kind of neutral, right? I'm going to give it that. Phil?
Yeah, those are very neutral chairs. And conference rooms are always very neutral, right? It's kind of meant to keep you bored, but somehow awake and cold. Anyways, I am going with, right, because I always have so much junk, I am going with my trusty, it's my Comcast cable tie, right? And these are fun because they're soft Velcro.
Oh, soft.
We like soft Velcro.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, so Fumble, what would you give those memes?
Okay. Well, not just one, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 post-it notes. There you go.
Ooh. Not just one, not just two, not just three, not just 4, 5. That is awesome scores. A soft Velcro from Phil and conference room chairs. You guys know the feeling. When I say conference room chairs, you have a feeling of what that feels like. I want to remember that so that you suffer with me. But anyways, guys, we say some things that, some people might not like. So subscribe to us on alternative video platforms like rumble.com and our personal favorite where they don't censor, bitcointv.com. And join our Telegram group. Link us a Bitcoin memes to review. Because a Bitcoin meme review, and we need memes to review. But anyways, Phil, it's time for the Daily News. The Daily News is brought to you by CryptoCloaks.com. They make the best 3D printed Bitcoin merch, like the cool, badass Trident case, or the famous Bitcoin grenade. Super badass. It comes in different colors, and you can take advantage of the link down below for 5% off anything on the store, CryptoCloaks.com. All right, everybody, you know the drill, right? You know how we do on Simply Bitcoin. We tell you a million times, even though people still don't listen, they'll still like to comment. We are an apolitical show. That means we don't lean left or right. We stand for anybody who's for Bitcoin, right? And we brought a very special guest today on the show, and he has a different, not that it freaking matters, but I think it's really it's a good change that you have different, essentially, political ideology on the show. You probably noticed Phil and I are libertarians, right? Well, we brought Fumble, and he's a liberal. He's on the left, right? And I think today's episode, we're gonna name it. It's called The Progressive Case for Bitcoin. I have so many freaking questions. I know Phil has questions as well, right? And we're just gonna bounce it off Fumble, see what he says, right? Because there's a lot that I don't understand. There's a lot that people all don't understand as well. So I'm just gonna read part of this article. It's called For Progressive Bitcoiners, Offense is the Best Defense, right? And just read some of the article, right? Bitcoin has a public perception problem among progressives. It's still viewed as a predominantly conservative project. Why is that, Fumble? Why is it viewed as a predominantly conservative project?
It's a good question. I think that it's more just that the association is, well, partly the unit bias. So obviously people think, oh, you have to have lots of money to buy Bitcoin. Therefore, it is a thing for the very wealthy, and that it's like the stock market. I think those are the narratives that just kind of get people dismissing it when it's not that. We all know that it's not that.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm going to keep reading. It says, their natural aversion to Ted Cruz means his championing of Bitcoin isn't winning over any blue-leaning converts anytime soon. The polarization is compounded when progressive icons like Elizabeth Warren, legacy Democrats like Hillary Clinton, fear-mongering their voters about it. It also perpetuates a legitimate concern. Women and gender-expansive individuals are still underrepresented in Bitcoin. Meanwhile, right-leaning audiences are leaning into Bitcoin. MicroStrategy maverick Michael Siliquid, or I don't know how to say that word, about Bitcoin on Tucker Carlson. He spoke about Bitcoin, okay? He's trying to be fancy. He just says he spoke about Bitcoin, but he used a fancy word. Anyway, Tucker Carlson used the same platform to rhetorically exonerate the domestic terrorists that stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th to seal. I don't think... Okay, anyways. Wow. Okay. So Tucker can't cover Bitcoin because, anyways, oh my God, this is so crazy, Phil. Anyways, when the right controls rhetoric in our country, the results are a public that can hardly discern truth from fiction. The right throws the pitch, desperate to combat the narrative. The left is left swinging at whatever they throw. Okay. So I think he's trying to essentially make the case, right, that what I'm seeing from this article is that he is worried that the progressive left is being left behind. And I think that the case that he's trying to make is essentially that because you have such predominant, specifically in the United States, but such predominant left-wing figures being anti-Bitcoin, he's concerned that a lot of the left are essentially missing the benefits of Bitcoin. And honestly, Phil and I have talked about this at length on the show, where it would be a lot easier for us, because that's what we personally identify with, to just, cover the right-wing perspective. But we've always said on the show, Bitcoin is all-inclusive. Bitcoin is for everybody. And the last thing that we want to happen, Fumble, is for Bitcoin to become a partisan issue. Because I think, personally, look, in the right wing, I understand people on the right, it's like, yeah, you like the sovereignty aspect of Bitcoin, you like the individuality aspect of Bitcoin. But on the left, it's perfect, because Bitcoin banks the unbanked, right? Bitcoin gives a chance, it gives a shot to the underprivileged of society, right? It really takes out the rot that is in the central banking system that I don't think is a left and right issue, right? So what would you say to that? Why is it that, and I see this all the time, that the political left is so anti-Bitcoin? Why do they hate it so much? I know there's the weather argument. Do you want to kind of answer on the climate topic? Like,
yeah.
How do you feel about the climate topic and Bitcoin's energy use?
Well, I think just generally we're seeing like the irony of people who are supposed to be skeptical of big capital, of corporations, of the media machine, kind of lap up a lot of the nonsense that we hear. So a lot of people regurgitate to me stuff about energy, but they're just regurgitating. They're not really like processing what that would mean, what are the incentives, and how that actually drives the energy system forward. And it's the irony of the fact that Bitcoin's actually probably the most significant driver towards any kind of significant action on climate change, or at least just making our energy system green and sustainable and available, not just having it cleaner, but just available for everyone. Just access to cheap energy is like a fundamental thing for the world's poor as well. So yeah, I don't know where this comes from. Like I say, I think a lot of the left is put off by the idea of you see a lot of like finance bros in Bitcoin, a lot of people who have money to invest, a lot of people that can speculate, or that even are concerned about things like inflation, in like a fundamental way. Whereas I see that we really need to bring back the connection with things like Occupy Wall Street. The fact that it is beyond left and right, that is a revolt against the status quo, and energy does come into that as a small, like a significant part. But for me, I see like the impact on inequality, and the fact that it is the great leveler as some of the most significant aspects of Bitcoin. And we all know, like, so I'm jumping around a bit and touching upon a few different topics, but how censorship on social media, we've all faced we've at least witnessed how that's kind of manifested. And the left, I think, well, when I even say the left, who's the spokesperson of the left? We hear some like vocal voices, and things are kind of dismissed as leftist. So it's kind of hard to kind of say the left think this or that. But there were portions of the left that were very okay with censorship, And I think that's definitely changed. I see a lot more leftists that I follow. They've had their YouTube channels shut down, their Twitter taken offline, and I think people are waking up to the need to that the government isn't our friend. You know, that any kind of meaningful change in society, whatever your political ideology, is going to be snuffed out and censored as much as possible. And you know, whatever you care about, whether that's about inequality or climate change or whatever, you pick any topic. You know, being anti-police state, then Bitcoin is just like the ultimate censorship-resistant, permissionless tool that is going to, you know, should be part of anyone's tool belt. You know, so it applies to us all.
Absolutely. And let me just kind of read this passage again. It's from fee.com, and again, the name of the article was The Progressive Case for Cryptocurrency, not Bitcoin specifically, but for Bitcoin and shitcoins. And I think this passage is fascinating. And honestly, when, you know, I think about it in my head, I think that this is one of the major components that a lot of people on the left completely miss this fact. And let me kind of read the article. It says, the dollar is not just a piece of paper, it symbolizes a system, and that system benefits the wealthy by design. The Federal Reserve, the bank of banks that controls the money supply, actually has the power to tax in a way, but the taxation power is wholly undemocratic, unaccountable, and falls disproportionately upon the poor. It's called inflation, right? Which is something that, you know, you would think, right, that a lot of people on the left would identify, like essentially understand that, or at least have empathy for that, because inflation affects people on the lower end of the economic spectrum the most. But why is it that they're blind to that? Is it because there's so many, is it because there's Tucker Carlson associated with Bitcoin? Is it because there's a lot of, you know, hardcore libertarians associated with Bitcoin, and their reflex reaction is this must be bad? Why, you know, and Bitcoin, Twitter's an echo chamber. Okay, so you're gonna essentially speak with and interact with the people that, you know, essentially see the world the way you do. You know, it's just humans tend to do that, whether they do it on purpose or not. So I'm assuming that you hang out in a lot of Bitcoin left-wing circles. What would you, and your community is definitely smaller than the libertarian right. Why is that? If Bitcoin actually helps your cause just as much as ours, I guess.
I mean, even for me in my journey, I've only really been active on Twitter in the last year or so, and trying to like find other leftist Bitcoiners. I know that they're kind of out, and they are kind of coming out of the woodwork now. I think for the general masses, I think the energy FUD is really is the energy FUD, and just the sense that it's associated with a class of people that have money to invest. That kind of thing has immediately kind of switched a lot of people off. Even though it is the tool that we need, that every will need. I think that's probably one of the key things that switch people off. And also I think people coming into Bitcoin, because there's so many right-leaning voices. They might not say explicitly what their politics are, but you can kind of see there are certain political topics that are kind of considered in quite commonly by Bitcoiners in a certain way. And I've noticed that some people that I've known that are maybe originally more left-leaning actually become a little bit more right-leaning libertarian because of some of the narratives within Bitcoin. So it definitely challenges people's perspective on where they even stand, and opens up a lot more like a conversation as to like, you know, what are my concerns. And I think that a lot of people on the right believe that fixing the money would solve the inherent problems in capitalism, and I think that's probably where I would differ. But what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, basically, I think it's not. It's more receptive on the right because there's maybe more right-leaning capitalists, people with large amounts of money, but also, more like in America, more fiscally conservative. I think like Ron Paul in America, very in favor of gold, or very against the current monetary system, how money is printed and what that's going to lead to in terms of inflation. So there are already those voices there, and also I just think that you don't really have a left media. And I know that I've even seen Bitcoiners say like, oh, but CNN is not left-leaning. Like, I don't really think, when I think of what left-leaning media there is, I really struggle. Like, anything that I can think of is maybe more independent, online media. You don't really have the big network. So somebody even proposed, oh, what if we had Sailor on, what's her name, Maddow?
Rachel Maddow,
and it's just like, well, I don't know what the ultimate platform would be, but I think it's just about not hearing it from the right people. I think that I don't like Tucker Carlson's politics, but I recognize that it was a good platform in terms of, it's one of the most watched programs. There's a lot of people watching that, and Sailor, whatever like critiques I might have of him, he explained things really well, and that got through to a lot of people. So in the name of adoption, I'm really like happy about that. But I think that a lot of people that have their kind of political blinders on, unless they're hearing it from somebody that they kind of like look up to, like Yanis Varoufakis has been kind of anti-Bitcoin. He's a Greek economist and a lefty. He seems to be okay with central bank digital currencies and think that that's a good route. There are other lefty thinkers that haven't really got the point. And the more I've come across them and realized, oh, they don't actually know what they're actually dealing with, they're missing the point. It's just kind of added to my conviction. But
do you see it as an uphill battle? Do you see yourself, because the predominant, and I hate, and I understand what you mean by, CNN is not, what you would say a left-wing channel. It's more so corporate media. I completely understand that when you say that, but unfortunately, it is what it is. You kind of have to see the reality for what it is, right? You have predominant, whether the establishment left wing or more underground independent left wing. The matter of fact is that a lot of people on the left hate Bitcoin. Do you see it as an uphill battle trying to convince them? And what would be the case? Like, what if you were to lay out a case in front of them and you would go point by point? How would you go about convincing them?
I think the energy thing is a key point to get at. I think it's like, if you care about climate justice, as they'll frame it. Could
you define what climate justice is? What does that mean?
Oh, a good question. I guess it would just be about basically just kind of bringing back the system to a point where the consumption is not having an impact on the people who suffer the most in the world. So like the global south suffer most from the practices of the global north. Like the rich countries, can emit the carbon, they can put out the plastic waste out there in the world and whatever. And it's smaller countries, it's island nations that are kind of on the receiving end. So there's that aspect as well of the West sneezes and the poorest in the world get a cold. So I think
so essentially, like, the U.S. and China and all these countries, they're just burning and throwing CO2 into the atmosphere, and then it's like countries like the Maldives that suffer the consequences of, global warming and all that stuff. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. So I think that's a big angle I would go for. It's like,
but how would you go about convincing them otherwise, right? Because they see Bitcoin and Bitcoin's just using a crap ton of energy. How would you convince these people that energy being used is actually good for people? Actually, specifically, good for people that need that type of independent, non-political money the most?
I think you have to base it in the fundamentals first for them to understand that the energy use is worth it and what the energy use is actually protecting. Because if you take it away from the energy per transaction bullshit, and you actually kind of explain that you're securitizing a network of this people's money, I put it in those terms because you're taking a monetary network that was privately owned. You can say it's part of the, the Fed in America is a private institution, So these money printers, this whole entire monetary system is in private hands. And if this thing, Bitcoin, is a people's money that is separated from the state, that is truly, enshrines our own rights within the code because we can hold it, then basing it on that premise that it's something money for us, and that the energy used is just to secure that. And it's not about energy use, it's about what the energy is used for and where that energy comes from. And if I often ask people that bring up this issue, what's your feeling on the petrodollar then? Because the petrodollar is backed by oil, is backed by guns, it's backed by, the inherent force and violence. So unless you have a critique about that and tell me how that's different from Bitcoin or worse than Bitcoin, then you've lost. And on the energy point of just having the incentive, the driver towards this green energy, if now that we have this buyer of last resort, that anywhere in the world we can find energy, however stranded it is from civilization, it can be in the middle of nowhere, we now have a financial incentive. And I think ultimately, whatever your politics, left or right, but if you have a goal, it's about how the incentives align to that goal and what gets you there.
So what you're trying to say is that it's more so an educational problem. It's not so much an ideological problem. It's the fact that people are essentially consuming wrong information, right? But
absolutely,
okay, all right, now understood. Okay, so fair enough. Okay, so I have this really interesting passage. It's from the Progressive Case for Bitcoin.medium.com. And I'm going to read it, and it's things that I highly disagree with, but I touched upon a couple things that I wanted to get your perspective on. Why Bitcoin's network effect can't be neutral, right? Many Bitcoiners equate the Bitcoin network's neutrality with Bitcoin being the great equalizer, which is what you were saying. You were essentially saying that Bitcoin is not going to inherently fix the problems with capitalism, right? You said that a little bit earlier. It's quite understandable. After all, the network is decentralized, censorship-resistant, sovereign, and borderless. Bitcoin is an unprecedented structural upgrade to money that favors no country, corporation, or group. However, without intervention, a neutral network will only reproduce existing inequalities. For Bitcoin to reach its full transformational potential, more people of color, LGBTQ communities, women, and the global poor must own Bitcoin. They must also become early adopters and benefit from the first mover advantage. To achieve this, at minimum, Bitcoiners must employ what we know about the network effect to proactively bring Bitcoin to new and diverse audiences. So again, I highlighted the part intervention, which is how do you do this without coercion, right? How do you achieve this without coercion, right? Because essentially the article, what I've noticed is it's essentially contradicting each other. It's contradicting itself, right? Why Bitcoin's network effects can't be neutral. The whole point of Bitcoin is that it is neutral, right? So how do you make something more equal, right, without coercion? Phil, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just okay. So this whole thing, right? This is where people get lost in the nuance, right? Because At its core, at its base, Bitcoin is neutral. People, human beings are not. And the flawed idea, okay, that people have to be coerced into, or an intervention takes place. The second intervention takes place, to me, it's lost. It's lost at that point, because if we are steering network effects, then we are not letting it grow naturally. And as a result,
But to be fair, right? That's the right wing perspective. That's what we think, right? So we kind of see it from, it's up to the individual, right, to really, make his or her own choices. But I'm also empathetic to the fact that our friends on the left might not see it that way. So Fumble, what would be your response to essentially what Phil is saying? And I know I think the same way, right? Which is, how do you intervene in a network that's already neutral, right? How do you, because you can't, and this goes back to one of the main, so let me back up a little bit. One of the main staples of the left in modern day politics is the redistribution of wealth. But Bitcoin makes it extremely difficult for that to happen the way it's been happening for I don't know how many years. And the redistribution of wealth goes back to essentially leveling the incomes of people to kind of create essentially more equality in society. How would you deal that? How would you deal with that in the Bitcoin world? And I just wanted to add on top of that is, I think that a lot of the vitriol or the hate, right, for lack of a better word, from the left in modern day politics comes from the fact that you can't touch this as much as that you used to be able to touch this. You can't democratically affect the money the way that people they've been used to operating and used to be doing for I don't know how many like decades now. How would you respond to that? Or do you come from the school of thought that you're kind of like this anarcho, libertarian lefty, or or do you think it requires a change of mentality? What would be your response to that?
I do definitely put myself more as lefty, libertarian, or like anarchist perspective, and I from what I get from Nicole's, I think it was Nicole's article, is that intervention may be too direct, too like strong in its kind of connotations, but maybe just like an education campaign, because for whatever reason, there are people just who need it most, who are just switching off, and they're not receiving this information. They're not understanding why they should even be curious. And I think that's a big shame. And a lot of Bitcoiners will say, "Oh, well, you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve." But I don't think that's fully fair. And I think that a lot of people that are buying Bitcoin now, it's because your friends or your family, people close to you, are educating you. And so I think what I take from Nicole's kind of point is that maybe we should focus on that effort. It's not like we only want gay Bitcoiners. We only want this like category of Bitcoiner, but just to make the case clearly and succinctly to why the left should be paying attention to this, and why it is not just a thing for the right. A friend of mine, I even fell out with me and stopped talking to me because he said, "Oh, you're a capitalist now, Fumble. That you sold out." And it's like, no, it's not really about that. It's not really, for me, like Bitcoin just gives you the freedom and autonomy to create the systems that you want in society. And if somebody wants to have a more capitalist leaning thing or a socialist leaning thing, for me, when I see Bitcoin, when I read about it and understand more, to me, it's very left. So to try to make the case to others that this screams left wing to me, it's just an educational problem. But Yeah, go on.
Phil, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that is exactly the point, okay? I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Because you see, we have this inherent division, okay? So number one, we don't understand money properly, thanks to our wonderful education systems and thanks to previous generations' incentive models, okay? We, for the most part, do not understand how money should function, how it should retain value. And as a result, right? As a result, this all has to be undone in order for somebody, like, because this goes back to your point about, not necessarily agreeing with people getting Bitcoin when they deserve it. But if you think about it, it all has to do with the level at which and the commitment at which the individual is willing to objectively look at the information that they understand about money and then take in new information. And that's what becomes a challenge. So to me, I believe we are fighting an uphill battle, because there is a lot of there is a lot of unlearning that needs to be done before before a proper level of understanding can happen. So to your point about having to, educate your friends and family and stuff like that, like, we can thank the divisive, incorrect information that we have had for years and years, regardless of party affiliation, right? Let's be honest, Keynesian economics, regardless of, you've got people on the right that support it, you've got people on the left that support it, doesn't make a difference. And the other piece to this is that because we have this dualistic kind of political base layer, right, where it's always us versus them, it's almost inherently, I'm not going to say impossible, because I hate using that term, okay? But it becomes incredibly challenging to find proper middle ground that everybody can agree on, because the system is based in duality. So it's like we all start immediately at a disadvantage, right? That's kind of the problem.
Yeah,
I completely agree. So, Fumble, I agree with you 100%. I think the system is designed, the educational system is kind of designed to, fight with the other side. And by fighting with the other side, it kind of distracts you from the fact that the money is broken, right? Everyone's like, oh, it's the Republicans' fault. The left is like, oh, no, the right's all like, oh, it's the Democrats' fault. But no one's really focusing on the crux of the issue, right? Which is the money is stealing from everybody, and there's only a few benefactors from that theft, and everyone else is essentially being used, is essentially being milked as much as possible. Phil?
I just want to point out very quickly, okay, and this is a key, because you said there's a very small percentage of people that benefit. Make no mistake, those people that benefit, they don't give a shit about political parties. There is no left and right. There is only power and control. We are just being, and it doesn't, I'm talking about at the individual level, okay? So for them, it doesn't make a difference. It really makes no difference when you have that power structure. Sorry.
No, absolutely. No, you hit the nail on the head. So I kind of want to summarize a couple things, right? So it helps, the underprivileged, right, Bitcoin. It gives everyone a more equal, I don't want to say an equal shot, but it levels the playing field a little bit more versus if you compare it with the traditional system. It banks the unbanked, right? I think these are all very good selling points to our friends on the left, but what needs to change, Fumble? What would you want? What would you like to see in the left-wing part of Bitcoin? What needs to change, to see essentially more progress, or to see more people that identify themselves as, lefties or whatever? What needs to change for them to essentially kind of open their eyes and be like, listen, we might not agree with the people on the right politically and socially, right? But I think that there's a lot of things that we have in common, which is we're all getting stolen from ridiculously by this system. What needs to change for those people to open their eyes? Because the last thing that I want to happen, this is why we bring people like you on the show, is for Bitcoin to become a partisan issue, and it's not a partisan issue. That's the tragic part about this. What needs to change? What needs to happen in order for a lot of people on the left to wake up to the fact that Bitcoin helps them and helps the causes that they're fighting for tremendously. And I think that a lot of the hate that they have directed towards the right is not necessarily coming from right-wing politics, but it's more so coming from the fact that money is literally stealing from you every second of the day if your money's in fiat.
What needs to be done? I think not only the case of why it dovetails with leftist thinking so much, but also the argument for why it transcends left and right and why it's not a partisan thing. I think that those two cases need to be made stronger. And I think that among the leftist Bitcoiners that I deal with on Bitcoin Twitter, there's conversations. Actually, the writer of that article, Nicole, she started running some spaces on Twitter and basically encouraging people to set up their own podcasts, to write their own articles, and basically try to educate as much as possible. Why this is not like we're just jamming Bitcoin into our ideology, how it dovetails, how it's because you said it yourself, like we're being robbed from working people, the working classes. They and if you take the left wing kind of critique, we're being exploited for our labor. And then after that, we're robbed even further. So not only are we getting pittance compared to the labor the value we're actually like creating, but that's being taken from us as well. So I mean, the fact that Bitcoin is an open monetary network collectively owned by its participants, that's socialist to me. It's collective ownership. It's collective ownership. Anyone can get a node running. Anyone can mine. And when you're mining, you're getting the full fruits of your labor.
Well,
to me.
It solves one of the crux of the issues, because essentially what ends up happening in socialist societies is it's not collectively owned. It's owned by the leader elite, right? So essentially you're replacing capitalist elites with authoritarian elites instead. But you still have an elite group that own, and to use your line of rhetoric, the means of production, right? And then everybody else is just peasants and workers, right? So Bitcoin kind of solves that problem because it's rules without rulers, right? So it kind of lives into, and I agree with you in that sense that it is collective ownership, but no one really owns it, right? So it kind of solves the crux of the issue that is so hard to solve in meat space, right? In real world politics, because what tends to happen is, again, it's socialistic ideas. They're beautiful on paper, but what tends to happen in actuality is, instead of a capitalistic elite, right? Businessmen and all that, the guys twirling their mustache with the big bellies and all that stuff. You just have an authoritarian elite that own everything else instead, right? But it's never the vision that the socialists have of how society should be is never really made into actuality. But if you look into Bitcoin, right, essentially it happened, right, where there is no owner, there is no person calling the shots. And if you compare this to, and I want to tie this into what Phil was covering with the shitcoins, right? The shitcoins, there is an elite of shitcoin developers or whatever that essentially own everything, right? So Bitcoin is really the only one that, the way that we say it is rules without rulers. The way that you would say it is there's collective ownership, right? So I agree. I think that we have a lot in common. I think that we're divided by a lot of fiat politics, and we would love to bring a lot more left-wing Bitcoiners to just kind of pick their brain, because we completely agree. I think Bitcoin is for everybody. I think there's a lot of things that we disagree with on a personal level, but I think that we're all trying to fight the good fight, and that we all have a common enemy, right? And that common enemy is central banks, right, which enslave mankind. And I think that that's what we're all fighting for in a way, even though, we might have some personal differences along the way. But anyways, Phil, that was an awesome episode. There was a website by Pleb. Why don't you tell everybody about it?
Software releases. The websites by plebes or plebs is brought to you by CipherSafe. Check them out. CipherSafe.io. Store your seed in the Cipher wheel. Pet proof, tamper proof, rust-proof, Nico-proof, fill-proof. The link is down below. All right, we are looking at the website by HODLpunk. Take a look at this. This is a nice little link tree that he's got going on, okay? But it is full of fantastic, quick resources, right? With a great range. Why Bitcoin? Michael Saylor explains Bitcoin, the Immaculate Conception, the Bitcoin standard, the fiat standard. He's got, like, you can see, great texts. You go down, YouTube, look, he's got us. Shout out, thank you so much. He's a fellow...
Thanks,
yeah, he's a fellow subscriber, fellow Bitcoiner. It's like, we appreciate that, you know? List of DeFi hacks, we always love that. Here you go. You've got some GitHub stuff for what's going on to check out Bitcoin. He outlined how-to videos, right? We always recommend BTC Sessions. He's got like the best how-to videos out there, especially for Bitcoin. Then the deep dive, right? Bitcoin rabbit hole, the white paper, all that good stuff. And how to buy Bitcoin, hardware wallets. Anyways, a great little resource by a fellow Bitcoiner. Check out the link. It's going to be down below.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. All right, guys, that was our show. We're going to change it up a little bit. Like we always say on the show, Bitcoin is all inclusive. So, you know, we're going to try to get more Bitcoiners from our friends on the left to come on the show, give their perspectives, because I think it's absolutely fascinating. And we have a same enemy. We have a common enemy, which is central banks. Central banks enslave all of us. We're all trying to fight that good fight, even though we might be seeing it from different angles. But anyways, I want to give a shout out to our awesome guests. You can give them a follow at Fumble on Twitter. And of course, if you like the show, you know what to do. Smash that like button. And if you want to continue hearing the Bitcoin news from the Pleb perspective and the catastrophic fails, definitely consider subscribing. You guys, bear with me this week. The lights are not going to be good. It's all whatever. I am traveling. I'm doing this from a conference room. That's how committed I am to Simply Bitcoin. But anyway, see you tomorrow, guys, for a brand new episode.
Politics aside, we all need Bitcoin.